There is this very unique, very modern kind of anxiety that hits when you're standing in the skincare aisle of a pharmacy.
No, absolutely. The paradox of choice.
Yeah, exactly. You're holding two seemingly identical plastic bottles. One says, like, SPF 50 broad spectrum, and the other says PA plus mineral defense.
Right. And you have no idea what either of those actually mean.
None at all. The fluorescent lights are buzzing. You just want to go to the beach. And suddenly, choosing a lotion feels like taking an advanced chemistry exam while wearing a swimsuit.
It is incredibly overwhelming. And honestly, you aren't alone in feeling that way. I mean, we go to the store expecting to buy a simple, straightforward shield against the sun.
Right.
But what we're actually looking at on those shelves is a highly engineered, globally debated chemical matrix.
Which is wild. And that is exactly our mission for today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We have a massive stack of research detailing the science, the surprisingly ancient history, and the massive global impact of sunscreen.
It's a huge topic.
It really is. We are going to decode this incredibly complex world for you. We want to move past the confusing marketing claims, figure out how these lotions actually work on a cellular level, and wade into the very real environmental controversies happening under the ocean's surface.
Because it's not just about us.
Exactly. By the time we're done here, you are going to understand exactly what you're putting on your skin and why.
Which is vital because the story of sun protection isn't just a story about avoiding a temporary sunburn. It is fundamentally about understanding how humans have interacted with our local star for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And how our bodies cope with the radiation it constantly throws at us.
Let's actually start there, in the past. Because before we get to the complex chemical formulas sitting in our beach bags today, we have to look at how humans historically tried to solve the exact same problem, the sun's relentless heat and light.
Right, people have always needed to go outside.
Exactly. It turns out ancient civilizations were already formulating their own early versions of SPF. We're talking about ancient Greeks slathering themselves in olive oil and ancient Egyptians using complex extracts of rice, jasmine, and lupine plants to protect their skin.
And what is truly fascinating about those early attempts is that they weren't just guessing.
Really? I kind of assumed it was trial and error.
Well, a bit, but they weren't just throwing random plants onto their skin. Many of these natural compounds have inherent photoprotective properties.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like rice bran, for example. It contains compounds that naturally absorb certain UV rays. Olive oil provides a rudimentary physical barrier while delivering antioxidants.
Oh, they actually worked.
To a degree, yes. They were essentially creating early, mild sunscreens based on deep generational observation.
And it isn't just ancient history either. Looking at the source material, there are traditional indigenous practices still heavily in use today that rely on natural pastes.
Oh, definitely.
For example, the Sama-Bajo people, they're nomadic seafarers in Southeast Asia. They use a paste called borax.
Right, the waterweed paste.
Yeah, water weeds, rice, and spices. They wear it to protect their faces from the incredibly harsh sun that reflects off the sea.
Because reflected UV radiation is incredibly potent, so a physical paste is a brilliant adaptation. And you see similar adaptations elsewhere, too.
Like where?
Well, in Myanmar, there's a long tradition of using thanaka, which is a yellow-white paste made from ground tree bark.
Okay.
And in Madagascar, they use mason joni. That's a ground wood paste that has served dual purposes for sun protection and beautiful facial decoration since, like, the 18th century.
That's amazing.
Yeah, these are incredibly effective, thick physical barriers.
But eventually we had to move from physical wood pastes to the invisible lotions we use today.
Yeah.
And looking at the research, the scientific turning point actually happened in 1820.
Yes, Sir Everard Home.
Right. An English physician who made a massive conceptual leap. He realized, through experimentation, that sunburns aren't just caused by the sun's thermal heat.
Exactly. I mean, before that moment, people largely assumed a sunburn was literally just a burn, like touching a hot stove.
Right, like if it's hot, you burn.
Exactly. But once it was established that invisible ultraviolet rays radiation you can't even feel were causing the cellular damage, the entire scientific approach shifted.
The game totally changed.
It did. The race was suddenly on to find substances that could specifically block those invisible wavelengths.
Which leads to some truly wild experiments. By the 1930s, modern chemical sunscreens were being born globally.
Yeah, the early chemistry days were intense.
Tell me about it. In Australia, a chemist named A.J. Milton Blake created an early commercial product using tannic acid. But the one that really caught my eye was in Germany.
Oh, the IG Farben guys?
Yes. Scientists at the chemical company IG Farben were literally hiking up freezing mountain peaks, like the Jungfraujoch in the Alps, just to test early chemical filters on themselves.
It's wild to think about.
They were enduring freezing temperatures at high altitudes, where the UV radiation is intensely strong, just to see if their chemical mixtures could stop their skin from reddening while still allowing it to tan.
It's a testament to how badly we wanted to solve this problem. But the real catalyst for mass production, as with so many technologies, was the military.
Right, World War II.
Yeah, during World War II, the U.S. military had a massive crisis on its hands. Soldiers stationed in the Pacific Theater were getting absolutely roasted by the tropical sun, to the point where it was a serious operational hazard.
So in 1944, an airman and pharmacist named Benjamin Green steps up and invents something called Red Vet Pet.
Red veterinary petrolatum.
Yeah. I just have to imagine what this was like. It sounds like they were literally basting soldiers in a thick, sticky red petroleum jelly.
Basically, yeah.
Let me push back on this, though. Did that red jelly actually offer any kind of sophisticated chemical protection, or was it just an incredibly uncomfortable, suffocating physical barrier?
Oh, it was almost entirely an uncomfortable physical barrier.
I knew it.
Yeah, it was incredibly thick, messy, and ruined clothing. It essentially worked by standing like a brick wall between the skin and the sun's rays. It was highly effective at stopping a burn, but absolutely terrible to wear.
Sounds miserable.
But, that messy red jelly was the vital predecessor to modern commercial sunscreens. In fact, Green later mixed that concept with cocoa butter and coconut oil, which eventually became the brand Coppertone.
Oh, wow. I had no idea that's where Coppertone came from. And right around that same time, in 1946, an Austrian chemist named Franz Greiter got a terrible sunburn while climbing a mountain called Pisbuen.
Another mountain climber.
Right. He went home, hit the lab, and created glacier cream. That cream became the foundation for the brand Pisbuen, which is still huge today. But what blew my mind is that Greiter is actually the guy who later, in 1974, introduced the concept of SPF, the sun protection factor.
Yes, he gave us the metric we all use today to measure UV protection, though it is quite humbling to realize that his original glacier cream from the 1940s is estimated to have had an SPF of about 2.
SPF 2. Today, we wouldn't even consider that sunscreen.
Not at all.
So let's fast forward from Greiter's SPF 2 and messy red petroleum jelly to the highly engineered products we have now. What exactly are these modern creams doing on a cellular level?
Well, the science breaks down into two main categories of UV filters. You have mineral, which are also called physical filters, and chemical, which are also known as organic filters.
Okay, let's start with the mineral ones. Those typically use inorganic compounds like zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, right?
Right. And historically, people thought these worked entirely by reflecting the sun.
Like a mirror.
Exactly. But we now know that while they do reflect and scatter a small percentage of UV light, acting like millions of microscopic mirrors sitting on top of your skin, their primary mechanism is actually absorbing the UV radiation, but they sit purely on the surface.
Now, chemical sunscreens or organic filters operate a bit differently because they use specific carbon-based molecular structures.
They do.
I always like to use this analogy. If a thick mineral sunscreen is like a literal shield deflecting incoming arrows, a chemical sunscreen is like a microscopic sponge.
That's a great way to think about it.
It absorbs that dangerous high-energy UV radiation, undergoes a harmless chemical reaction, and wrings that energy out as low-energy heat that simply dissipates off your skin.
That is a highly accurate and brilliant way to visualize the mechanism. The molecular bonds in the chemical sunscreen catch the radiation, vibrate, and release it as heat.
That's so cool.
And both of these types of filters are tasked with absorbing two very different, very dangerous types of rays, UVB and UVA.
Let's break those down because the difference is critical. UVB is the radiation that causes the immediate visible sunburns. It's the one that sends you home looking like a lobster.
Right.
But UVA penetrates much deeper into the skin's layers.
Precisely. UVA rays are insidious. They don't primarily cause that painful surface burn, so you don't even know you're being damaged.
But that's scary.
It is. Instead, they penetrate deep into the dermis and cause cellular DNA damage. They are the primary driver of melanoma and other skin cancers.
So UVA is the silent killer and UVB is the visible alarm bell.
Exactly.
But here's the part of the research that I think is going to absolutely floor anyone listening right now. We always hear sunscreen is good for anti-aging, but the data is astounding.
It really is.
A massive 4.5-year study of 900 people in Australia show that daily broad-spectrum sunscreen use flat out prevented the development of wrinkles and sagging skin.
Yep, completely halted it.
And even more incredibly, a separate 12-week study showed that daily use of SPF 30 actually reversed existing photoaging.
That's one that always surprises people.
Right. Now, I have to be the skeptic here. When the researchers say reverse, do they mean a lotion literally reverses the arrow of time on a wrinkle, or is something else happening biologically?
It's not a time machine, unfortunately, but the visible effect is profound.
Okay, so what's happening?
Here is what's actually going on. The sun is constantly causing micro-injuries to your skin's collagen and elastin. Your skin is incredibly resilient and is always trying to repair this damage.
Makes sense.
But imagine you are trying to rebuild a brick house, and while you are laying the mortar, someone is continuously throwing new bricks at the walls. You can never catch up.
You're just constantly doing damage control.
Exactly. When you start using sunscreen diligently every single day, you finally put a barrier up. You stop the barrage of bricks.
Oh.
And because the skin is no longer forced to constantly fight off new acute UV damage, its natural regenerative processes can finally take over and focus on repairing the older existing damage.
So clinically, you see a visible reversal of photoaging. Dark spots fade, texture improves, and fine lines diminish.
Exactly.
So the absolute best, most scientifically proven anti-aging cream on the market is just standard, everyday SPF.
Without a doubt.
But it's not just those active UV filters, the sponges and mirrors doing all the heavy lifting, right? The inactive ingredients play a massive role.
Immensely. Formulating a good sunscreen is about creating an entire defensive ecosystem.
Okay, how so?
Because realistically, no UV filter is 100% perfect. Even the best ones let a tiny fraction of UV light slip through. When that light hits your skin, it generates free radicals.
Such a bad.
Very bad. They're unstable molecules that rip through your cells and damage your DNA. To combat this, formulators add antioxidants like vitamin C and E into the inactive ingredient list.
So if the UV filters are the frontline troops taking the brunt of the attack, the antioxidants are the medics working right behind them.
That's exactly right. They neutralize any free radicals that slip past the primary defenses before those radicals can mutate your cells.
That is fascinating.
And additionally, many tinted sunscreens include iron oxides. Research shows iron oxides offer significant protection against high-energy visible light, or blue light.
Oh, from screens and stuff.
From the sun mostly, but yes, blue light. We are now discovering that it also contributes heavily to skin aging and hyperpigmentation.
Okay, so if this product is essentially a medical marvel, a literal fountain of youth that prevents deadly cancers, why is there so much fear-mongering and regulatory panic surrounding it?
It's a really valid question.
Because it feels like every summer there is a new terrifying headline about sunscreen being toxic.
The regulatory environment is indeed very complex. Currently, the FDA categorizes sunscreen ingredients based on safety profiles. They use a designation called GRACE, generally recognized as safe and effective.
Right.
As of right now, only 2 ingredients, zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, the mineral filters, hold that permanent GRACE status.
Which naturally makes consumers anxious about the chemical filters, especially because older chemical ingredients like PABA were actually banned recently in 2021 due to severe allergic contact dermatitis.
Yes, PABA was a real issue.
So why is the FDA holding back on the modern chemical filters?
Well, the FDA is requiring more safety data on organic chemical filters, largely because modern testing shows that these chemicals are absorbed through the skin and into the human bloodstream.
Oh, okay. That sounds a little scary.
It does, but this is a crucial point. The FDA has not concluded that these filters are unsafe or toxic.
They just don't know for sure yet.
Exactly. Absorption does not automatically equal harm. However, because they enter the bloodstream, the FDA wants rigorous pharmaceutical-level data to be absolutely certain there are no long-term systemic effects.
That makes sense. It's an abundance of caution, not a declaration of danger.
Precisely.
But then we had the massive benzene scare a couple of years ago. People were tossing out brand new bottles of sunscreen left and right because they heard it caused cancer.
I remember that well.
But looking at the actual data from the sources, the carcinogen benzene is not a sunscreen ingredient. Nobody is formulating lotion with benzene.
No, absolutely not. This is a perfect example of why understanding the manufacturing process is so critical. Independent testing by a lab called Valager found benzene in about 27% of the aerosol spray sunscreens they tested.
Right.
But the benzene wasn't the sunscreen. It was an impurity stemming from the butane propellants used in the aerosol spray cans.
So it was a manufacturing contamination issue with the spray mechanism itself, not a fundamental flaw with the active sunscreen ingredient.
Exactly.
Still, it led to massive voluntary recalls and a lot of public distrust. But let me step into the shoes of a skeptical consumer for a second, because there's another huge debate that always pops up: vitamin D.
Ah, yes, the vitamin D debate.
If I am diligently blocking all the UVB rays, and UVB rays are exactly what trigger my skin to produce vitamin D, aren't I just treating skin cancer for brittle bones and a massive vitamin D deficiency?
It is probably the most common pushback dermatologists hear, but the clinical math is very clear. Regular sunscreen use does not lead to vitamin D deficiency.
Really? How is that possible?
First of all, no sunscreen blocks 100% of UVB rays. Even a perfectly applied high SPF sunscreen lets a small percentage of UVB through, which is more than enough to trigger vitamin D synthesis.
And there's an evolutionary mechanism at play too, right?
Yeah.
You can't just stand in the sun all day and stockpile vitamin D like a battery.
Yeah, precisely. The skin reaches an equilibrium very quickly. After just a short period of unprotected exposure, further UV exposure actually starts degrading vitamin D just as fast as it creates it.
Wait, it degrades it?
Yes, it's an evolutionary protective mechanism, so your body doesn't reach toxic levels of the vitamin. You physically cannot overdose on sun-created vitamin D.
So standing in the sun for 4 hours without protection isn't banking extra nutrients. It's literally just destroying your cellular DNA for zero added benefit.
Exactly. And more importantly, the catastrophic risks of sun-induced skin cancer heavily outweigh the perceived benefits of unprotected sun time.
Especially since you can just get it elsewhere.
Right. Adequate amounts of vitamin D are easily and safely obtained through diet, like fatty fish and fortified milk, or through simple supplements.
Okay, so we know it's safe, we know it's necessary. What does this all mean for the confusing numbers on the bottle? Let's talk about the math of SPF and what I like to call the user error trap.
This is where things get really practical.
Because despite all this brilliant science, practically everyone is using this stuff wrong. Let's define the terms first. SPF 15 means exactly 115th of the burning radiation reaches your skin. SPF 50 means 150th reaches the skin.
Correct.
But here's the massive misconception I hear all the time. People think SPF 50 lasts longer than SPF 15.
That is perhaps the single most dangerous myth about sun protection.
It's not true.
Not at all. A higher SPF blocks a higher percentage of rays in any given moment, but the physical product itself breaks down, sweats off, and degrades at the exact same rate regardless of the number on the bottle.
Oh, wow.
Whether you wear SPF 15 or SPF 100, you must reapply it every 2 hours. It does not buy you more time in the sun.
And remember, SPF only measures UVB, the burning rays. To know if you're protected from the cancer-causing UVA rays, you have to decode an entire Wild West of global metrics.
It is a mess.
It really is. The EU requires a specific UVA seal. The UK uses the Boot Star rating system, where 5 stars means you have the best ratio of UVA to UVB protection.
And in Asia.
Asian brands use the PA system, which is based on a testing method called persistent pigment darkening. In that system, PA+++ is incredibly high UVA protection.
But here is the catch. All of these metrics, the SPF numbers, the PA ratings, the star ratings, assume one crucial, fundamental thing.
Which is?
That you are applying the sunscreen exactly the way it is applied in a laboratory testing environment. And almost nobody does.
The great application failure.
Yes.
When the FDA tests a product to certify it as SPF 50, they test it based on an application thickness of 2 milligrams per square centimeter of skin.
Which sounds completely abstract.
Totally abstract. But for an average adult body, that equates to about 35 milliliters of lotion.
Yeah.
That's a full shot glass
Yeah.
or a golf ball-sized amount just for one single application.
Not a lot.
And for just your face and neck, it's about 1/4 to 1/3 of a teaspoon.
And if you've ever actually measured out a 1/4 teaspoon of thick sunscreen and tried to rub it into your face, you know it is a lot of product.
It takes a minute to rub in.
Studies consistently show that most people only apply 25% to 50% of that required laboratory amount.
And this is where the math gets genuinely terrifying. I always use a seatbelt analogy for this.
Okay, let's hear.
Buying an expensive SPF 100, but only applying a thin, cosmetically elegant little layer is like installing a heavy-duty 5-point racing harness in your car, but only clicking one buckle across your waist.
That's a perfect analogy.
You feel like you're fully protected, but you're fundamentally compromising the entire system.
Yeah.
Just how drastically does the math change when we underapply?
It changes exponentially, not linearly.
Wait, Really?
Yes, if you apply exactly half the required amount of an SPF 50 sunscreen, you do not get SPF 25.
You don't?
No, because of the physics of how multiple layers of light-absorbing molecules stack on top of each other, the drop-in protection is massive. You actually get closer to the square root of the SPF value.
A square root.
Yes, so half an application of SPF 50 might only be giving you an SPF of around 7.
Wow. So you buy SPF 50, you put a comfortable thin layer on, and you walk out into the glaring sun thinking you're wearing an iron shield, but you're actually wearing paper.
That is a massive, dangerous trap for consumers.
I had no idea the drop-off was that steep.
It really is, and the situation is often complicated by mineral sunscreens. Because zinc oxide and titanium dioxide can leave a white, chalky cast on the skin, people are even less likely to apply the correct thick amount of mineral formulas, leaving them severely underprotected.
Which brings us to a conflict that is larger than just our own skin. It's not just humans suffering the consequences of sunscreen habits and formulas, it's the environment.
This is such an important part of the conversation.
We need to talk about global regulations and the coral reef crisis. Because depending on where you live, the sunscreen you use is regulated very differently. In the United States, sunscreen is regulated strictly as an over-the-counter drug.
Right, which means the FDA approval process for any new UV filter is incredibly rigorous, slow, and expensive. It requires extensive animal and human clinical trials. Because of this pharmaceutical bottleneck, there are currently only 17 approved active UV filters in the U.S. And incredibly, the FDA has not approved a single new UV filter since 1999.
1999, that's the year the original Matrix movie came out. We are protecting our skin with dial-up internet-era technology in the U.S.
Oh, we really are.
Meanwhile, Europe, Japan, and Australia regulate sunscreen as a cosmetic.
Yes, and that cosmetic classification allows for much faster research development and innovation. The European Union currently has 29 approved UV filters.
So they have way more options.
They have access to entirely new generations of highly photostable chemical filters that provide exceptional broad-spectrum UVA protection. And crucially, many of these newer large molecule filters aren't absorbed into the bloodstream the way the older 1990s U.S. filters are.
It's a huge, frustrating irony. The U.S. treats sunscreen like a serious pharmaceutical to protect consumers, but by locking down the process, it has totally stifled innovation, leaving Americans to rely on older, greasier, less effective filters.
Exactly.
While Europe treats it like mascara, resulting in vastly superior, broader spectrum protection. But the stakes are much higher than just getting a greasy lotion. The environmental devastation caused by some of these older chemical filters is staggering.
It is an ecological crisis, which is why we are seeing local and regional governments stepping in where federal agencies haven't.
Right.
Hawaii and the island nation of Palau, for example, have flat out banned the sale of sunscreens containing the older chemical filters oxybenzone and octinoxate.
And the research explains exactly why these bans are happening. It's not just a vague idea that chemicals are bad for the environment. The biological mechanisms are brutal.
They are very specific and very damaging.
In sufficient concentrations, these specific chemicals literally damage the DNA of the coral. They induce severe deformities in coral larvae so they can't grow properly.
And it gets worse.
Right. They even awaken dormant viral infections within the coral, causing them to expel their symbiotic algae, which makes the corals incredibly vulnerable to massive bleaching events.
What's truly terrifying is the scale of the toxicity. In laboratory settings, some of these compounds induce complete coral bleaching at incredibly minimal concentrations.
Like just a drop.
Essentially, yes. And in the real world, it's highly concentrated in tourist areas. An assessment in Hawaii's Kahalu Bay found oxybenzone concentrations 262 times higher than what the EPA designates as high risk for marine life.
So we slather this stuff on to go snorkeling, we jump in the water, and it washes off into the bay, creating a highly concentrated toxic bath for the exact beautiful reefs we travel thousands of miles to see.
That's a tragic cycle.
And it's not even just the chemical filters that are the problem. The research points out that even titanium dioxide nanoparticles, the mineral filters that everyone assumes are totally natural and reef safe, can react with UV light in the ocean water to create hydrogen peroxide.
Yes.
And that hydrogen peroxide kills off phytoplankton, which is the foundational base of the entire marine food web.
It creates an incredibly profound tension for all of us. I mean, we have an absolute medical imperative to use sunscreen to prevent fatal skin cancers and severe cellular damage.
Right.
But we are simultaneously facing an ecological imperative to stop poisoning the oceans and killing off the reefs.
So let's summarize this massive journey for everyone listening. We started thousands of years ago with ancient seafarers mixing water weeds and rice paste, and moved through the discovery of invisible UV rays and chemists climbing the freezing Alps.
Quite a history.
We learned that your daily sunscreen is essentially an anti-aging time machine that allows your skin to finally repair cellular damage, but only if you use a full shot glass amount to beat that terrifying square root math of SPF under application.
Don't forget the math.
Never forget the math. And we see this massive ongoing clash where U.S. regulations are stuck in the 1990s while our oceans are silently suffering from the chemical runoff of our beach vacations. The ultimate takeaway here, wear it every single day, apply a lot of it, reapply it constantly. But please, pay close attention to the ingredients, especially if you are swimming in the ocean.
And importantly, look toward the horizon. Because the science of photoprotection isn't stopping with the formulas we have today.
That's the good news.
The research we've been reviewing outlines some incredible cutting-edge development currently underway in laboratories around the world.
Yes. I want to leave you, our listener, with a glimpse into that future. Scientists are right now developing sunscreens based on bioadhesive nanoparticles.
This is fascinating stuff.
Imagine a lotion that encapsulates the UV filters, binds tightly to the very top, dead layer of your skin so it doesn't rub off or wash away in the water, but is completely non-penetrant, meaning it never enters your bloodstream and never washes into the reef.
Furthermore, researchers are heavily studying compounds called synapate esters. These are novel UV filters inspired directly by the natural photoprotection found in plants that have survived under the sun for millions of years.
Think about that. The next great leap in skincare might literally come from mimicking nature itself.
It's coming full circle.
Imagine a future where applying sunscreen isn't a sticky, messy, ecologically guilty chore, but rather donning an invisible, biologically inspired suit of armor, one that completely protects our cells from the ravages of radiation while remaining utterly harmless to the ocean ecosystem.
That's the goal.
So the next time you are standing in that pharmacy aisle staring at the wall of plastic bottles, you aren't just taking a chemistry exam in a swimsuit. You're holding a century of scientific triumph and the key to both your own health and the health of the planet.
I want you to close your eyes for just a second. Just, picture the scene.
Okay.
It's July 19th, 2026. You are one of 80,663 people just packed into MetLife Stadium in New Jersey.
And it is sweltering. Right?
Oh, totally. The heat is just radiating off the concrete. The air is thick with this unbelievable buzzing tension, and you are about to witness history. We've got a massive stack of sources today, mostly anchored by the official Wikipedia historical record of this match, and our mission for this deep dive is to pull you right out of your earbuds and drop you directly into those stands.
Yeah, because it's the kind of atmosphere where you can, physically feel the collective heart rate of the building spiking. And, for good reason.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the athletic stakes alone are just astronomical here. You have Spain, right, rolling into the stadium on a staggering 37-match unbeaten streak.
Which is just absurd.
It is. And then on the other side of the pitch, you have Argentina, the defending World Cup champions, the reigning Copa America champions, two absolute titans of global soccer colliding right here in the U.S.
Right.
But, as we comb through the historical record today, it becomes incredibly clear that what happened that day was so much more than just a 1-0 soccer game.
Yeah, the final score is what goes down in the record book, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the actual mechanics of this event, from the actual blades of grass they were running on, to the unprecedented ticketing costs, to this highly polarizing halftime show, this match really represents a massive structural shift.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us a blueprint of exactly how global sporting events are, fundamentally changing behind the scenes.
And I think that is the perfect place to start, because before the whistle even blew, just getting this match into this specific stadium was a complete saga.
Oh, it was a nightmare.
Right. When you look at the initial bids, MetLife Stadium, or New York, New Jersey Stadium, as FIFA temporarily rebranded it, it was not the assumed frontrunner.
Not at all. If you rewind the clock a bit, Dallas was heavily favored.
Right. AT&T Stadium.
Exactly. AT&T Stadium had this massive, sprawling commercial plan. I mean, they were even going to do live simulcasts of the match at 2 nearby venues.
Just to pack more people in.
Yeah, just to squeeze every possible drop of ticket revenue out of the local area.
Which sounds like an absolute financial slam dunk for FIFA. But then you also had Los Angeles in the mix, right?
Yep.
Because SoFi Stadium is this multi-billion-dollar architectural marvel. So why didn't the biggest game on Earth go to Hollywood?
Well, it comes down to the hidden economics of these mega events. First off, SoFi's physical field is 69 yards wide,
Okay.
which is actually too narrow for FIFA's strict standard dimensions.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, but the fatal flaw wasn't really the architecture, it was the money. The stadium's owner, Kroenke Sports and Entertainment, got into this really brutal dispute with FIFA over revenue sharing. Kroenke essentially looked at the deal and threatened to pull out entirely.
Wait, I need to pause you there. Why would a stadium owner ever threaten to walk away from hosting a World Cup final? Isn't that like the ultimate prize?
You would think so, right? But you have to look at the mechanism of how these events are actually funded. When a city hosts a World Cup, FIFA keeps the lion's share of the direct revenue.
So like ticket sales and stuff.
Yeah, primary ticket sales, the broadcast rights, the massive corporate sponsorships. FIFA takes all of that. The host city and the stadium owners, meanwhile, are left holding the bag for, massive infrastructure upgrades, immense security deployments, operational costs.
Which are huge.
Astronomical. And the promise is always that the city will see a long-term return on investment through global tourism. But in the short term, it is a colossal financial burden. And Kroenke simply refused to accept FIFA's terms.
Wow. So LA balks at the revenue split, Dallas gets blindsided, and MetLife swoops in and take the crown.
Right.
But they still had to physically alter the stadium to meet FIFA's demands, right? Like, our sources show they had to rip out 740 seats in the corners just to widen the pitch.
Yeah, and the alterations didn't stop at the seating chart. The playing surface itself became this massive point of contention.
Oh, the turf issue.
Exactly. MetLife operates on artificial turf, but FIFA mandates natural grass for the World Cup. So, in May of 2026, they trucked in temporary Bermuda grass from North Carolina and just laid it directly over the synthetic turf.
And it did not go well.
No.
Because during the broadcast, you could visibly see these worn, dry patches all over the field. Players were slipping all over the place. They were complaining the surface was way too dry. I mean, how does that even happen? You are hosting a billion-dollar athletic event, and the grass is literally dying under their cleats.
It comes down to biology, really. You cannot just slap sod on top of concrete or synthetic turf and expect it to behave like a natural field.
Because it doesn't have anywhere to root.
Exactly. Bermuda grass requires a deep, interconnected root system to hold moisture and maintain structural integrity. When you lay it down temporarily like that, it lacks that deep foundation. So when a 180-pound athlete plants their cleats to change direction at a full sprint, the grass simply gives way.
So the players are out there struggling with the literal ground they're running on, but honestly, the fans might have had it worse.
Oh, the transit stuff.
Yes. Let's talk about the logistics of just getting to the building, because the NJ Transit controversy is wild. Our sources state that to transport fans from Secaucus Junction to the stadium, NJ Transit originally announced they were going to charge $150 for a round-trip train ticket.
4 out that typically costs about $12.90.
$150 for a commuter train.
Yeah.
I read that and had to just stop. I mean, is the fundamental cost of being a sports fan just permanently changing? Are we pricing regular people entirely out of the experience?
Well, it connects directly back to what we just discussed with Los Angeles and the hidden costs of the tournament.
Yeah.
NJ Transit had to absorb $48 million in event service and security costs.
$48 million just for transit security.
Yeah, we're talking counterterrorism units, massive police overtime, all the crowd control infrastructure. And none of that was subsidized by FIFA. So how does a public transit agency recoup a $48 million deficit? They pass it straight on to the consumer.
That is brutal. Though the public outrage was so intense that they eventually managed to secure some sponsorships and knock the price down to $105 and then finally $98.
Which is still nearly an 800% markup.
Right.
It really illustrates the reality of modern soccer. Hosting this tournament is no longer just a civic honor. It is a highly complex, incredibly aggressive financial undertaking where the local municipality takes on all the friction and the governing body takes the profit.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the massive entertainment product that was wrapped around this specific match. Because here's where it gets really interesting. The
Okay.
2026 final featured the first ever World Cup halftime show.
Yeah, and it was a true collision of cultures. You basically had traditional global soccer colliding head-on with American-style sports entertainment.
It was co-produced with Global Citizen, curated by Chris Martin from Coldplay. And the lineup sounds like a hallucination.
It really does.
You have Madonna, Shakira, Justin Bieber, BTS, the New York Philharmonic, Burna Boy, and characters from Ted Lasso and the Muppets all sharing the pitch.
It was certainly an overwhelming spectacle.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second, though. Soccer purists absolutely hated this. Wayne Rooney on the BBC Live broadcast famously didn't mince words. He just flat out said, it was crap.
Very blunt.
Very. But the organizers were aiming to raise $100 million for the FIFA Global Citizen Education Fund. And isn't bringing in a Super Bowl-style audience a net positive for growing the sport's global footprint? Why were the traditionalists so incredibly furious?
Because the execution fundamentally violated the mechanics of the sport itself. A soccer match is defined by its flow, right? Its momentum. And more importantly, this spectacle broke the actual rules.
Hello.
The halftime break lasted over 27 minutes, which is a direct violation of the IFA laws of the game. The laws strictly state that halftime cannot exceed 15 minutes.
Wait, I need some clarification here. I always thought FIFA was the ultimate authority on global soccer. Who is IFAB, and why couldn't FIFA just change their own rules to accommodate a longer halftime?
Yeah. It's a very common misconception. FIFA runs the tournaments, and they handle the commercial operations. But the actual rules of the sport are governed by IFAB, the International Football Association Board.
Okay.
They were founded way back in 1886 by the 4 British soccer associations. And to this day, any fundamental rule change requires a majority vote from IFAB. They exist specifically to serve as guardians of the sport, completely independent of FIFA's commercial interests.
So FIFA basically went rogue to put on a pop concert.
They bent their own foundational governance, yes. And beyond the rules, you really have to look at the physical toll on the players.
Right, because of the delay.
Exactly. When athletes are playing at a world-class intensity, their muscles are flooded with blood, they are sweating, their heart rates are peaked. If you force them to just sit in an air-conditioned locker room for nearly 30 minutes while BTS and the Muppets perform, their core temperatures drop.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, lactic acid pools in their muscles. The risk of soft tissue injuries just skyrockets.
So it's not just grumpy traditionalists complaining about pop music. It's a valid argument that the commercial spectacle actively endangered the physical rhythm and safety of the players.
Exactly. It raises a major question about the future of the sport. Is the governing body now prioritizing global television sponsorships and pyrotechnics over the physical safety of the athletes and the integrity of the match itself?
Wow. Well, eventually the smoke dissipated, the stage was cleared, and those athletes had to come back out and actually play a World Cup final. And the match itself, well, I wouldn't exactly describe it as a high-scoring Hollywood blockbuster.
No, it was a tactical stalemate of the highest order. Let's just look at the statistics for a second. Argentina, the defending champions, became the first team in the entire history of the World Cup to register 0 shots on target during the regular 90 minutes of a final.
0 shots on target for an entire game. Again, playing devil's advocate for like a casual American sports fan, that sounds like a cure for insomnia. Does a game need goals to be a classic? Or is there something happening under the surface that makes a 0-0 draw thrilling?
What's fascinating here is you have to look at the mechanics of what Spain was actually doing on the pitch. They didn't just hold the ball to run down the clock. They played a system that physically and psychologically suffocates an opponent.
Okay.
Spain maintained 65% possession in the final. To understand that, imagine playing a game of keep away, but inside a telephone booth.
Oh man, that sounds incredibly claustrophobic.
That's exactly how it feels for the defending team. Spain compresses the space. They keep the ball moving so quickly that the moment Argentina tries to step forward to intercept, the ball's already gone.
Right.
And on the rare occasion Spain did lose possession, they would swarm the Argentine player with 3 men within seconds to win it right back.
So Argentina isn't just, sitting back, relaxing on defense. They are constantly sprinting, shifting, and covering gaps without ever getting the relief of controlling the game.
Precisely. It is utterly exhausting. Doing wind sprints for 90 minutes while chasing shadows basically turns your legs to jelly. It is a masterclass in dominance. Over the entire 2026 World Cup, Spain conceded only one single goal, which happened against Belgium in the quarterfinals. They broke a defensive record that had stood since 1990.
That is wild. But when Argentina's defense did finally break down under all that pressure, they had an absolute wall waiting in the net.
Oh, Emi Martinez.
Yes. Emiliano Martinez, Argentina's goalkeeper, put on a historic performance. He made 11 saves in the final. That is a World Cup record.
It is.
He was denying Lamine Yamal from close range. He was leaping to stop Mikel Oyarzabal. He kept them in the game basically single-handedly.
He was phenomenal. But relentless pressure eventually causes structural failure. You can only absorb so much before something snaps.
And that snap happened right before extra time. Argentina's Enzo Fernandez goes in for a really reckless challenge on Spain's Pau Cubarsí. He gets a second yellow card, and he is sent off the pitch. Argentina is down to 10 men.
And that is the death knell against a team like Spain. If chasing shadows with 11 men is exhausting, doing it with 10 is physically impossible.
Right.
The gaps in the defense become just a fraction wider. The rotation becomes a half-second slower. It was only a matter of time.
So the climax finally arrives in the 106th minute, deep into extra time. Ferran Torres, who came on as a substitute with fresh legs, gets the ball off a header from Nico Williams. He strikes it with his left foot. It finally beats Martinez, and it's 1-0 Spain. They hold on to that lead, and they take the title.
A complete triumph of patience, tactical discipline, and sheer physical endurance. But, the moment the final whistle blew, that discipline entirely vanished.
Yeah, the aftermath of this match is a study in absolute jarring contrasts. On one hand, you have this beautiful, historic, athletic achievement. With this victory, Spain became the first country in the history of the sport to simultaneously hold both the men's and women's World Cup titles since their women's team won in 2023.
Exactly.
It is a monument to the infrastructure and philosophy of Spanish soccer.
But the immediate scene on the pitch was totally chaotic. As Spain's bench rushed the field to celebrate this incredible milestone, a massive brawl broke out.
Just a complete mess.
Yeah, the frustration of 120 minutes of chasing the ball finally boiled over. The historical reports describe Argentina's Leandro Paredes completely losing his cool tackling Spain's Eric Garcia, shoving him by the throat, and physically wrestling Gavi to the ground.
It was an ugly scene that directly contrasted the beauty of the game they had just played. And that chaos transitioned seamlessly into the trophy presentation, which was its own kind of surreal theater because of the political heavyweights involved.
The guest list in the VIP boxes was extensive, to say the least. You have the King and Queen of Spain, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney representing the co-host nations.
Interestingly, though, Argentine President Javier Milei actually skipped the final.
He did, yeah.
Citing his own superstitious beliefs about jinxing the team.
Which, honestly, is the most relatable, deeply soccer fan thing a head of state could possibly do.
Seriously. But then the attention turns to the actual podium on the field. Now, we need to be clear here, looking strictly at the historical record from our sources. Without getting into the politics of the left or the right, we are just looking at the logistics of this event. The scene on the podium was objectively chaotic.
The Wikipedia breakdown details a highly unusual setup for the trophy lift. You had FIFA President Gianni Infantino and U.S. President Donald Trump presenting the trophy to Spain's captain, Rodri.
And the sources note that as they stood on the podium, they were met with incredibly loud boos rolling down from the fans in the stadium, and then this physical bottleneck occurred.
Right, because typically the dignitaries hand the trophy to the captain and step back, allowing the team to swarm the podium for the iconic victory photograph.
Right.
But the source material explicitly notes that President Trump lingered in the center of the podium, speaking with the players.
Right, you have Rodri and Spanish players just standing there holding this 13-pound gold trophy, visibly eager to lift it and have their moment. And the reports say Infantino was actually physically trying to usher Trump out of the center of the frame so the team could celebrate, but he insisted on staying, eventually just stepping to the edge of the victory photograph. It created this immense, awkward tension.
It really did.
You have this pinnacle athletic achievement, a lifetime of work for these players, and it's suddenly sharing the frame with political grandstanding.
If we reflect on the totality of the 2026 World Cup, it paints a very complicated legacy. On paper, it was a tournament of incredible firsts. The first 48-team tournament, expanding the global reach. The first simultaneous men's and women's champions in Spain. But structurally, it was a tournament that dragged the hidden, grinding frictions of global sports into the harsh daylight. It really exposed the immense strain between the physical purity of the sport, the insatiable demands of commercial interests, and the heavy hand of global politics.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at municipalities taking on millions in unsubsidized debt, resulting in a $98 commuter train ride. We explored how the governing body bent its own foundational rules, risking player safety, just to fit a 27-minute pop concert into the middle of a championship match.
Right.
We watched a grueling, tactical 106-minute keep-away game decided by a single goal. And we ended with a historic trophy lift interrupted by a physical brawl and an awkward political photo op.
It means that the World Cup has evolved into something far beyond a soccer tournament. It is an economic engine and a mirror reflecting our global culture, the incredible athleticism, the hyper-commercialization, and the unavoidable political realities.
And that brings us to a final thought for you to chew on. We just witnessed a World Cup final that bent the very laws of the game to accommodate a massive entertainment spectacle and saw politicians inserting themselves directly into the pinnacle athletic moment. As we look ahead to 2030 and beyond, with the immense financial pressures only growing, will the actual 90 minutes of football eventually become just a sideshow to the entertainment and political circus surrounding it? Will the purity of the game survive the weight of the spectacle?
That is the defining question every fan and every governing body is going to have to grapple with in the coming decade.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the spectacle, keep looking beyond the scorelines, and we'll see you next time. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're doing something pretty ambitious. We're looking at a story that unfolds over, nearly 2 centuries?
That's right. 187 years, to be precise. We're leaving Earth behind, at least in spirit, and diving into the complete transformation of Mars.
We're talking about Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogy, Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars.
Exactly. And this isn't just, spaceships and lasers. It's a really deep, detailed look at building a society, terraforming a planet, from 2026 all the way to 2212. It's like a massive sociological experiment.
The scale is just huge. So our mission today is to unpack this whole saga for you. We want to look at the big philosophical clashes that drove everything, how corporations evolved or maybe devolved into these meta-nations.
Yeah, and the human cost, right?
Right.
Especially with that extreme longevity. What does living for 2 centuries actually do to people?
Yeah, psychologically. And it's important to remember, this story, it leans more utopian, wouldn't you say? At least on Mars.
Definitely on Mars. It focuses on building something better, egalitarian, scientific, while Earth is kind of falling apart in the background with overpopulation, ecological disaster, the usual suspects.
And this isn't just some obscure sci-fi. This trilogy cleaned up. Red Mars got the Nebula.
And Green Mars and Blue Mars both got the Hugo and the Locus Awards. I mean, these are landmark books. They really set a standard.
Okay, so let's get into it. We have to start at the beginning, right? The launch in 2026, the first 100 colonists, and this huge argument they brought with them.
Right. The voyage itself is fascinating. 2026, the ship, the Ares, it wasn't sleek or futuristic like you might imagine.
No, it was practical, built from shuttle fuel tanks.
Yeah, external fuel tanks clustered together. Basically, they used what they had, made this enormous functional craft. Very utilitarian it had to be.
And on board, the first 100, mostly Americans and Russians, reflecting the politics of the time.
But a global group, really. Right. Scientists, engineers, thinkers. And critically, they had Michel Duval, a French psychologist.
His job was just to watch them.
Essentially, yeah. To observe the group dynamics, the stress, how this new Martian identity was forming, or if it was forming. He was documenting the birth of something new.
And as soon as they landed, the big fight started. Terraforming, yes or no?
And it wasn't just a debate. It became this deep, personal political divide that shapes the entire story for the next 200 years.
So let's define the sides. You had the Reds.
Personified by Anne Claiborne, the geologist. Her view was basically, humans don't have the right to remake entire worlds. Mars is ancient, unique, preserve it.
She liked the emptiness, the desolation.
Exactly. She wanted minimal interference, maybe live underground, leave the surface as it is, respect its solitude.
And the opposition, the Greens.
Led by Saxe-Fred Russell, Sachs, the physicist. Brilliant guy, very driven. His position was almost the polar opposite.
He thought humanity had to spread life.
Yes. Viriditas, he called it. Life is the rarest thing we know of. To find a dead world and not bring life to it, that was for him a failure, a moral failure almost.
And his scientific drive kind of merged with something else, didn't it? Through Hiroko A.
Right, Hiroko A., head of the ag team, she developed this belief system, Ariophany. It blended the science of terraforming with a sort of spiritual appreciation for life, for growth, humans as agents of creation.
So who won the initial argument? Because they did start terraforming.
Well, the UNOMA, the UN Organization of Mars Affairs, they ultimately sided with the Greens. That gave the green light for these massive initial projects.
That's the moholes.
Yeah, drilling deep shafts into the crust, kilometers deep, to tap geothermal heat for power and also to release gases, warm things up a bit.
And Sachs's cocktail of gases.
The Russell cocktail, yeah, designed to thicken the atmosphere, trap more heat, early steps, big steps.
But while they're drilling, Earth politics are creeping in. The corporations.
The transnational corporations, or transnats, they become incredibly powerful back on Earth, basically dominating governments.
And they found ways to extend that power to Mars?
Through loopholes, using smaller nations as flags of convenience, registering their Martian operations under these compliant countries to bypass UNOMA rules.
Yeah.
It was a slow squeeze, tightening corporate control.
Which just added fuel to the fire among the first 100 leaders, that power triangle. Boone, Chalmers, Maya.
Oh, yeah. John Boone, the American hero, first man on Mars, the face of the mission. Frank Chalmers, the pragmatic, maybe ruthless American technical lead. And Maya Toitovna, leading the Russian group, very sharp politically.
And the sources say Boone and Chalmers weren't just political rivals. They were competing for Maya, too.
Definitely. It was personal, intense, and it leads directly to disaster. The book opens with Chalmers setting things in motion for Boone's assassination. Starts the whole story on a really dark, cynical note.
It's interesting about Boone, though. He seemed like the simple hero. Well, here we are. But later, turns out he was addicted to a Megendorf.
Yeah, this fictional endorphin-based drug. It suggests his whole cheerful, stable public image might have been chemically assisted. A bit of a deconstruction of the hero myth.
While Chalmers, the cynic, maybe had some hidden idealism.
It's complex. His methods were often brutal, but maybe driven by a vision. But his approach definitely created resentment.
And that resentment found a voice in Arkady Bogdanov.
Bogdanov, yeah. Russian engineer, anarchist leanings. He's the real spark for revolution. His Bogdanovism becomes this core Martian idea. Mars must be free. Free from Earth's control, its history, its corruption. Build something totally new.
What really pushed things over the edge, though, was longevity, right?
Absolutely. Vlad Tanev, another original, invents these treatments that basically stop aging. People could live for centuries.
But Earth, struggling with its own problems, restricts access.
Massively. Which makes Mars suddenly the place everyone wants to go. You get this huge, uncontrolled wave of immigration.
More people, more pressure, more transnat control.
And that's the trigger. Bogdanov sees Mars becoming just another Earth colony, exploited. So, 2061, the first revolution kicks off.
It starts well for the rebels, but Mars is fragile.
Extremely. Life support, habitats. You need stability. Earth's forces, or the transnat forces, were willing to be much more brutal. They had the advantage.
Bogdanov is killed.
Yeah, the city he was in gets bombed, decapitates the movement. But his death leads to this massive retaliation by his lover, Nadia Chernyshevsky.
The engineer, she designed the first settlement. She turns Phobos into a weapon.
She uses a hidden system Bogdanov built into the moon Phobos, where the main military base was.
What does she do?
Causes it to decelerate, forces it into the atmosphere, it breaks apart, destroys the base, and this is huge. It severs the cable to the space elevator.
The Clark asteroid tether. That snaps.
Yeah, whips across the planet. The destruction of orbital infrastructure, combined with nukes they'd set off earlier to release water, it triggers a catastrophic flood.
So the revolution fails, but kind of achieves independence through sheer chaos.
In a way,
Yeah.
most of the first 100 die or flee. Chalmers dies in the flood. The survivors, Sachs, Anne, Maya, Nadia, Vlad, they escape to Hiroko A's secret base, Zygote, under the South Pole.
And Phyllis Boyle, the transnat ally.
She gets flung into space when the elevator tether snaps on Clark, literally ejected.
Wow. So by the end of Red Mars, Earth's in chaos, transnats are consolidating power there, and the future of Mars rests with the survivors hiding underground and the kids.
The Nisai, the first generation born on Mars. The hope lies with them.
Okay, part 2, Green Mars. We jump forward 50 years, early 22nd century. What's changed?
A lot. Mars is literally greener. The terraforming has progressed. Plants can actually survive outside now, though the air is still not breathable. It's a different planet.
But Earth still has control.
Heavy control. And that hidden refuge, Zygote, it failed. The ice dome collapsed due to melting.
So the survivors had to scatter.
Yeah. The remaining first 100, their kids like Nerylon and Peter Claiborne, they spread out, forming this underground network, the Demimonde, still fighting for autonomy.
And the corporations have evolved, too, into metanas.
Right. Metanational corporations. They're not just companies anymore. They're like nation-states.
Yeah.
Huge global power brokers controlling resources, populations. It's a scary evolution.
And there's a difference between them. Praxis versus Subarashi.
Yeah, Robinson contrasts them. Praxis is presented as more benevolent, maybe, pushing for democratic business models, partnerships. They actually send Art Randolph to Mars to help the resistance.
Why would they do that?
Long-term thinking, maybe. A stable, independent Mars might be better for business eventually than a constantly resisting, exploited one. Subarashi, though, is the opposite.
Pure exploitation.
Pretty much. Treating Martians like cheap labor, trying to run Mars like the police states they helped create back on Earth. That conflict becomes key.
And meanwhile, the terraforming just keeps going, bigger and bigger.
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
Under corporate direction, mostly, but using Sachs's green ideas. We're talking continent-sized mirrors in orbit to melt the poles faster.
Drilling moleholes deep enough to create volcanoes?
Essentially, yeah. Tapping magma to release more gases, heat things up, melting the entire northern ice cap to get liquid water flowing. Rivers, lakes, the scale is just mind-boggling.
But the underground, the Demimonde, they're fighting back.
Preparing. Converting those moleholes into hidden missile silos. Sabotaging corporate projects. And they make this big move with Deimos, the other moon.
They move it.
Propel it right out of Mars orbit.
Why?
Learn their lesson from Phobos. Didn't want another potential military base hanging over them. It was a preemptive disarmament. Smart.
Now, Sax Russell, his story takes a dark turn here. He goes undercover.
Yeah, after the first revolution, he infiltrates the corporate structure as Stephen Lindholm. Keeps working on his science from the inside.
And runs into Phyllis Boyle again. She survived being flung into space.
Somehow, yeah. She made it back, still connected to the corporate side, though maybe less powerful. And she and Sachs, well, Lindholm, start a relationship. Ironic, huh?
Until she figures out who he really is.
Exactly. She exposes him. He's arrested, tortured for information about the underground. It's brutal. The stress causes a massive stroke.
Leaving him with aphasia, unable to speak.
Expressive aphasia, yeah. The guy whose ideas are reshaping the planet can't even form words. It's incredibly tragic.
And the rescue mission. This is where Maya steps in again.
Yeah. Maya organizes the rescue. And during it, she kills Phyllis Boyle.
Wow. Another echo of the past. Chalmers setting up Boone's death over Maya, now Maya killing Phyllis during Sax's rescue. It's like they can't escape that cycle.
It really feels that way. The violence just keeps repeating.
So the Second Revolution, they've been planning it for ages, but something else sets it off, not them.
Right. The trigger comes from Earth. A sudden, catastrophic sea level rise.
Not just global warming, though.
No, the book specifies it wasn't primarily the greenhouse effect, which they were sort of managing. It was volcanoes erupting under the West Antarctic ice sheet.
A geological event, just boom.
Yeah, instantly disintegrates the ice sheet, causes this massive global flood. Earth is thrown into absolute chaos.
And that's Mars's chance. The Metanats are distracted, weakened.
Exactly. The Martians seize control, mostly without bloodshed. But then, an extremist red faction bombs a dam near Burroughs, the main uncorporate city.
Why? To force them out.
Yeah, force an immediate evacuation.
Yeah.
Which leads to this incredible image. Thousands of people having to walk across the Martian landscape to another station.
It could be a station. But they can walk. The air is okay.
Marginally, thanks to Sachs's terraforming. Thin, cold, needs light protection, but not full suits. That desperate march, everyone together, kind of seals Martian independence. The Green Project, ironically, enabled their survival and freedom.
Okay, blue Mars. Another century passes. Mars is blue.
Literally. Liquid water is stable on the surface now. Rivers, seas, atmospheric pressure is up. It's a living world.
And it's become the center of the solar system in a way.
Politically, technologically, yeah. Universal health care, free education, resources.
Yeah.
It's the utopian dream realized.
Rare.
Earth's metanats are mostly broken, though some, like practices, are trying new, more democratic models.
But success brings new problems. Everyone wants to come to Mars now.
Huge immigration pressure for chaotic Earth.
Sure.
So Mars kicks in to overdrive the accelerometer throughout the whole solar system. Building asteroid cities, hollowed out asteroids with spin gravity, internal suns.
Amazing. Venus, Jupiter's moons, Saturn's moons, even Neptune's moon Triton.
And eventually, interstellar travel. Jackie Boone, John's granddaughter, takes a ship made from an asteroid to another star system, 20 light years away. Humanity is finally out there.
Back on Mars, they finally set up a permanent government.
Yeah, a constitutional Congress. Nadia Chernyshevsky becomes the first president. Reluctantly, apparently. She works with Art Randolph.
Yeah.
They become partners, have a child.
And the government structure, this is where they deal with the red-green split, right?
This is the genius part, I think. They create a legislature, standard courts, but also a separate environmental court.
And that's controlled by the Reds.
Exclusively, packed with Red faction members. It's a concession, but a powerful one. Any major project, anything affecting the planetary environment, has to pass muster with this Red court.
So they didn't crush the opposition, they built it into the system.
Exactly. They institutionalized the conflict. They recognized that the preservationist view, the caution, was vital for long-term survival. It's a structural check and balance. Pretty brilliant political science.
Which brings us to the big theme of Blue Mars, longevity. It worked. People lived for centuries, but there was a catch.
A huge catch. After nearly 2 centuries, the treatments start showing weaknesses. Not so much physical, but mental.
Memory.
Yeah. The brain just wasn't keeping up. Holding 200 years of experience, trauma, data, it started to degrade. Recall becomes difficult, fractured.
Like Maya Toitovna, she starts losing huge chunks of her past.
Forgetting friends, major events she lived through. Still functional, but her connection to history, their history, is fraying.
And then there's the quick decline.
This sudden fatal heart arrhythmia hits the very old, resists treatment. It's like a final system failure. Michel Duval dies from it.
And Sachs thought it was linked to memory loss.
He theorized that seeing Maya forget someone like Frank Chalmers triggered Michel's decline. The idea being that losing your coherent past, your connection to the collective story, that's what ultimately kills you, the psychological weight.
Wow, the cost of immortality is forgetting.
Or the inability to integrate it all. This pushes Sachs, who's recovered from his stroke but feels immense guilt over how the Green Project steamrolled Anne Claiborne's Reds.
Anne, meanwhile, is just done, refusing treatment.
Bitter, depressed, wants to die. She sees the Blue Mars not as a success, but as the destruction of the world she loved.
And Sachs, he forces the treatment on her.
Finds her collapsed, resuscitates her, gives her the longevity treatment against her will, forces her to live in this world she rejects. It's ethically complex, to say the least. Another layer of ambiguity for these characters.
But his guilt and the memory crisis pushes him back to science.
Right. He leads a team to develop a memory restoration treatment. The last 12 members of the first 100 take it.
And it works. Leads to some big reveals.
Oh, yeah. Huge aha moments. First, Sachs remembers his own birth, like the actual physical sensation. Connects him back to that core viriditas idea.
And the big one, Sachs and Anne.
They remember they were in love before they even left Earth. Their whole epic red versus green debate spanning decades was basically an unresolved personal argument they never quite finished.
So they finally reconcile.
Fall in love again, properly this
Yeah.
time, after nearly 2 centuries. Incredible.
What else, Phil Spoil?
Sachs remembers she was actually trying to get him released from torture when Maya killed her. Maybe lobbying in her own corporate way, but still. Makes Maya's action even more tragic.
And Hiroko A.
Sachs remembers her helping him during a storm shortly before she vanished for good. It convinces him she's still alive out there somewhere, though the books never confirm it. Oh, and Maya refuses the treatment. Doesn't want to dredge up the past.
So the end wraps up with another political crisis, immigration.
Anti-immigration faction trying to start a war with Earth. But Anne, Sachs, and Maya manage to unite people.
And the solution is compromise.
A big one. They agree to take migrants equal to 10% of Mars's population every year. A structured intake. It calms things down, leads to a new golden age, balancing principles with pragmatism.
And there's that short story collection too, The Martians.
Yeah, adds more color. Stories like Purple Mars, hinting at what comes even later, fills in some gaps. Hashtag take, hashtag outro.
So looking back at the whole trilogy, it's just immense. Political science, sociology, geology, psychology, all woven together over almost 200 years.
It really is a masterclass in world building and societal evolution. And that central conflict, red versus green, the fact that it wasn't one but integrated, that's key.
That environmental court.
Yeah.
building the opposition right into the power structure, recognizing that you need that dissenting voice for long-term health.
It's maybe the biggest takeaway. Politically, they learned something Earth didn't, escaping that zero-sum game.
So for you, the listener, what's the core tension here? It feels like it's this drive to create, to expand, to terraform versus the cost.
The cost to memory, to individual psychology, over these huge timescales. They conquered physical death, maybe, but then ran smack into the limits of the mind, the limits of history you can carry.
Survival meant spreading out, yes, but it also meant figuring out how to keep 2 centuries of memory coherent inside one skull.
Which leads us to that final thought, that lingering question the books leave us with. Hiroko Ai,
The spiritual leader, the founder of Zygote, champion of Ariophany, she disappears twice. Her fate is unknown.
despite sightings all over the solar system. And her name, AI, it's Japanese for love.
So the question is, what happened to love? What happened to that life force on Mars in this vast, complex system they built? Did it just get absorbed, forgotten like old memories? Or did it escape somehow?
Yeah. What becomes of that fundamental impulse in the face of centuries of progress and conflict? It's something to chew on.
A perfect unresolved note to end on. Thanks for diving deep with us into the dust, the plants, and the oceans of Mars.